What's happening, everyone? John Hendricks here for Boot Crew Media, coming at you with another episode of The Drive today, presented by Royal Honda of Metairie. Well, guys, I just want to say thanks first and foremost that I appreciate you guys tuning in. It's Friday. We're already on day 3 of Saints training camp. Day 4 is tomorrow. We get the fans back. A lot of cool things, and just come and hang out, have some time to talk a little bit about Saints camp and see what's going on, and obviously give you the latest and greatest out of there, and then obviously some reactions, observations. Come hang out, put your questions in the chat. I'll be able to hopefully see them for you, and we had some really cool ones yesterday, so thanks again for the support. So I guess first and foremost, nobody's with me, so I'll say that. So first of all, I tell you that get well to Chris Rosvalagu. So he's kind of under the weather, I'll just put it that, but he'll be back soon, obviously. And so I just want to tell him, hopefully you're feeling better. Best wishes and speedy recovery. Chef Pendy, thanks for tuning in. What's going on? How you doing today? And obviously Jack Collada, he's been doing a ton of work and a lot of things. We've been doing a lot of stuff with the Royal Honda, and he just does a lot of things for Boot Crew, and I'd appreciate him. Lala. And so let's get into training camp a little bit and kind of some big takeaways from day 3. I think the big thing that we have to start with is that Paulson Adebo looked really good out there. And so, again, I don't think it's just today. He made some plays earlier in camp, having a sack on a quarterback. And, just overall today, and his comfort level seems to be rising. I think that's the biggest thing that you take here, right, is that Paulson Adebo is a guy that's on the ascension, right? And so with him, I think it kind of begs the question, because a lot of people looked at this today and or just overall and said, oh, Alontae Taylor's coming for number 2, maybe 3. Look, they still have Bradley Roby, and, Marshawn Lattimore is going to be the top corner here. They have Paulson Adebo is probably going to be your starting guy, but, interesting wrinkle from last year and something that, I don't think we still have some clarity on is that, they use Bradley Roby in some of those packages, some of those series and stuff. So, it's something to pay attention to see whether they keep doing those types of things or how it kind of unfolds. But, man, Adebo had a really good day, pass breakups. He was just kind of all over the field, run stopping, just a lot of different things that he was able to do. And, look, again, the play that he had, maybe you would have got called for holding, maybe you would have called for defensive pass interference. Those are one of those things where maybe it was, but, I liked where he was and where he was from a footing standpoint, where his head was in relation to a launch of the quarterback, just the receiver, just all those types of things and the nuances. I think that's what you got to appreciate a little bit about him. And so I think that's the first big thing. Second one is no Taysom Hill today. So as far as attendance goes, look, you didn't have a lot of the same players that we didn't have from the past couple of days. Good news is Juwan Johnson was obviously back out there. He was working off to the side with Marcus Davenport, Pete Werner, and Rashid Shaheed. So that's good sign to see these guys doing some rehab off the side, because that means they're getting close to being ready to be out on the field. So that's an encouraging thing. But, obviously one of the downfalls is Taysom Hill. Took a shot on his ribs yesterday. We kind of talked about it, that he did leave practice a little bit earlier, but he did come back. But Dennis Allen said today that, he'll be out for a little bit. Now, a little bit, what does that mean? A week, 2 weeks? Just depends. Obviously that's a concern because he looked fantastic yesterday, and it was such a good thing to see him on day 1 and day 2 of training camp. Just kind of how excited he is for his vision, and how excited we are for his vision and where he's kind of going to go this season. So those are things that we're obviously going to play out and see how it kind of breaks down. And unfortunate injuries are a part of the game. Ryan Jensen got hurt for the Bucks. You never wish that upon anybody, but those things do happen. And so we'll have to obviously keep an eye on Taysom Hill and any guys that do get hurt. CJ Gardner-Johnson went off early. Bryce Thompson went off early a little bit today. That was mainly due to the heat. So they're going to be okay. But, they have this big old cold building, if you will. I forget what the real thing is called, but that thing's like 25 degrees in there. And so the heat is no joke. I mean, it was kind of overcast today. It was, still hot, but it was probably one of the best it felt that we've been at training camp probably in the past, 5 years, easily, something like that, without being indoors. So it was a good thing to just obviously say, okay, this is going to get to a lot of players. I think it's going to sneak up on some people, but these things are happening, right? And so as far as other things that I would say and call attention to, look, Landon Young was a huge one, right, for me. And these guys, somebody I talked to Ryan Ramczyk, asked him yesterday, just kind of about Landon Young and just kind of get his thoughts. And look, it sounds like the confidence is coming. It looks like he's kind of building upon things. He's doing first team right tackle reps and not just walkthroughs, but 11 on 11. Kind of seems like maybe they gave Ramczyk the day off. When those types of things happen, you're going to have veteran rest days. You're going to have some of those things that come up. But it was encouraging to see because this is a guy last year, the offensive line and the debacle they went through, right? And so seeing a guy like Landon, come in a spot where he starts against the Eagles, does pretty decent, and he gets hurt. Obviously, that's a bad thing when you're a rookie and those types of things happen. But, look, I think he looked really good today, especially on some of the reps against Peyton Turner. I think that's the biggest thing I appreciate is the fact that, man, he was able to handle his own and then some. And it wasn't just on a one type of rep, it was on multiple reps. And so, again, I think that's really encouraging to see him do those types of things. We get to questions on here. We got Pendy asks, who would you say running back 3 is right now? I think it's still to be decided. I don't think anybody's running back 3 right now. So, good question. I would think that, look, you got Kamara. You got to figure out how this legal process is going to play out. Maybe he doesn't have league discipline this year. Maybe this thing gets pushed back till next year, whatever the case may be. And then Mark Ingram, look, we even talked to him today. He's obviously one of the older running backs in the league, but guy says, I've got a lot left in the tank. And I mean, it kind of shows. I mean, maybe you don't see the burst and speed that you once saw from Mark, but I know he believes a lot in himself to be able to do things when he's called upon. And look, I think he gave the Saints a nice little jolt last year at the running back position and stuff that we saw him in. And obviously you made a trade with the Texans. You picked him up for practically nothing. He doesn't cost a lot, but behind him, that's the question mark. You signed veteran Malcolm Brown. He's getting some work with the first team. Maybe you say he's there by default at the moment, but Tony Jones Jr. had a pretty rough day. I mean, that practice overall was pretty rough for the offense. I mean, there was a lot of balls on the ground, drops, it's kind of sloppy offensive line, getting out of the breaks, just a lot of things that happened. So, tell you is I think nobody really is what I'd tell you at the moment. As far as running back 3 is like, I guess, distance himself. We did get to see Abram Smith a little bit today, kind of display some of his physicality, some of the things we were kind of expecting him that he was doing at Baylor, because you got to remember this guy was, running back, then program had some things happen, injuries and such, and he goes to linebacker and he plays a year in linebacker. Then he goes back to running back. Then he sets the franchise single season record for rushing. So I like Abram Smith. I think he can make the roster. I think at worst case, he's a practice squad priority guy, but, I think he's going to give it his all. But, you think about adding guys like Malcolm Brown. They had Devontae Freeman in last year. Tony Jones Jr. is playing so well in camp that, he pushed Latavius Murray out the door, right? And Devontae Freeman. And so, but right now, Jones Jr. had a tough one, and whoever it is, I think they're going to have to be kind of big on special teams and, obviously be able to do a lot more there. Look, I think that Dwayne Washington is somebody that you can't forget about. Devin Azigbo, you can't forget about them. But look, they need to figure this one out because, again, if something happens with Kamara, then you got Ingram that's doing, 20, 25 carries a game, and then all of a sudden he gets hurt. Then you're kind of up a creek without a paddle without a really good backup plan, if you will. So, again, I think it's to be determined. Still more information is needed, just like when you talk about Trevor Penning and stuff like that. John Butler, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you. Appreciate all your work. If you guys don't know John Butler, go check him out. He does some amazing things. If you have been a Saints fan for a long time, and even if you haven't, he does some amazing profiles on past, present players. It's just something that you just got to check out. Like anybody in the last 30 years, 20 years, some people that grew up in the 80s watching Saints players, 90s, definitely check out John Butler's work. Appreciate you tuning in, my man. Pendy's got another question. How have Justin Evans and Bradley Roby been looking? Roby took some first team cornerback reps yesterday. Today he looked pretty good too. I think Bradley Roby is a guy that you really do like on this team. I mean, it's a veteran guy. He can do a lot for you. Again, I talked about Paulson Adebo. Him and Roby split time. There's this series where you have Roby maybe start, and then Adebo comes in another series, and then that was just kind of flip flop. And I kind of asked like, hey, what's kind of the thought process on that? Never really did get an answer, so I think maybe it's one of those. Still get more information, but I do believe while Devo's really shining right now, that Roby is also there for him and they're with him too. That I think he can make some really good plays. He's going to play a big role on this team this season. So I'm excited to see, a lot more from him. As far as Justin Evans today, I think was the best that we've seen him flash at practice. I kind of noticed a little bit because the safety group is really, really stacked. I mean, I think this is the best safety depth this team has had in ever, right? And so Justin Evans, a guy that's kind of looking to make a comeback, relegated more to reserve duties right now, and he was doing some stuff like personal punt protector and stuff like that, and some of the things that we saw in minicamp. But today he makes some good run stuffs. He makes a good pass breakup. Again, that was things that you want to see out of him. And look, they're just so deep at that area. But good things from Justin Evans so far, good things from Bradley Roby. Most of these guys that I've seen so far, I think it's just encouraging to see some of these that it click so early. And of course, pads aren't on yet. We know that's supposed to be Monday. That's going to change a little bit of the complexities, but I would tell you other things I would say from today, something that I can't really, but you can't overlook Doug Marrone, right? And offensive line, everybody knows how offensive line was last year. It was a mess. You go through 58 starters or however many it was. It seems like it might change every single time, but it's almost 60 or it's north of 50 and, north of 55 if you want to call it. But they had a lot of problems. And, Doug Marrone, I asked Dennis Allen about him on the pre-training camp press conference, if you will, and just talked about him being a veteran coach and just kind of the type of guy that, man, he's gonna a tough love. He's going to tell you like it is, and he demands a lot more. But the thing is, when you got the huddle, he's right there up there by the huddle. He's working on the offensive line. He's preaching stuff about pad level, tempo. Let's make sure we focus. I don't like the way you got out of that break. Just all these types of things. I think we've seen a lot from the coaches. And again, I always say this too, but it seems cliche. You think coaches would be doing that, right? But a veteran guy like Marrone, who's been in this program, you have Zach Streif that works with the tackles. Marrone was working with the interior guys. I mean, this is a guy that I want to tell you he's a hard coach to play for, but I just think, the expectations are there. You know what to expect out of him. He knows how to get the most from his players. And for players like Cesar Ruiz and Andres Pete, this is where they need to get better. And Pete, is somebody, if he can just stay healthy for 17 games, that'd be wonderful. If Ruiz can improve his game, that would be a huge upside for this team. But, we'll see how it all plays out. But, look, we've gone through camp. I think you look at some of these players. Kirk Merrick has been a guy that's flashed a little bit. Look, I think there's a ton of upside for a lot of these players. You look at this roster, and I think it's pretty easy just about every season. But if you go through the roster, you could probably get 40 to 45 guys right as far as who makes the final roster. I think it's the last 10, maybe 15 that you're like, maybe I can make some cases here. Do you keep a 6 wide receiver? Do you keep 6 safeties? How do you view players like Bryce Thompson who give you, different positions at corner, safety, nickel, all those types of things? I mean, there's just a lot that kind of goes into the nuances. But at any rate, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. One thing I'll touch on too when talking about, players, a lot of people have asked about Trevor Penning. It's another thing that more information is needed. I wouldn't tell you he's going to start, right? It's James Hurst's job until it's not, is what I've kind of said for months now. And look, Penny's got to work on some of that pass protection, but I also feel like once the pads come on, you're going to see a little bit more about what this team saw in him and why they drafted him. And, it's not just a run support part aspect of it, but I think, his feet, he can be patient a little bit. There's things that he can work on to kind of match some of these premier pass rushers that the Saints have. And so I look forward to seeing more of that, kind of develop over time. John's asked, he says, who's one guy that surprised you the most and in a positive way so far? It's a good question. I'd lean to Landon Young right now, just overall. I think that's probably one of the guys. I'll tell you some other ones that are probably some people aren't really talking about, but Eric Wilson at linebacker, veteran they picked up, has had a good chance to kind of be alongside Demario Davis in a lot of these formations. I think Eric Wilson is looked pretty good. That's a spot right now with Pete Werner not playing at the moment. And again, I'd be a lot more concerned if Pete Werner wasn't on the field at all or he was just missing. That happened with Traquan Smith last year. He got hurt and we just didn't see him for a long time. He comes back, he's hurt. We just don't see him for a long time. But, I think Eric Wilson has come in and looked really good. I think that's one of those that I've really quietly would say that is starting to put some good things together. I think he's done exceptional so far. I think he's only going to get better. Lucas Kroll had a pretty good day of practice today. Again, he had a good catch. Dejon Dixon had some pretty good moments. I think Kirk Merritt, again, is another one that surprised in a positive way. I just don't know if I say here's a player that might have been like, man, I've just been stuck and jaw drops or anything like that. Because, last year for me, it was Andrew Dow. Because Andrew Dow did something every single practice. It didn't matter whether it's special teams, defense. He just did something during practice that you just saw like, man, this guy's going to make the team, right? And so Bryce Thompson kind of showed flashes of that early on in OTAs and minicamp. Really hasn't seen much, since then. But I guess for me, it's probably toss up between Landon Young and Eric Wilson. And again, I think Wilson's had more of benefit since, obviously he's a veteran and the fact that, Pete Werner's been out. So see if we get any more questions that come up and such. But again, if you guys aren't following us already, check out Boot Crew Media. Check out all our stuff there. It's not just me that's doing stuff. You got Chris Rosvalgu, you got Jack Collada, you got Lala doing a lot of the video work. She's there doing all sorts of remixes and stuff on our social media. So, and then give me a follow on Twitter at John J. Hendricks. Keep up with all my written work, Saints observations, to try to be as detailed as possible and make people feel like they're there, but it's at saints.media. Definitely appreciate all the support and such. So we'll see if we got any more questions that pop up, but we'll wrap this thing up because it is Friday and hopefully you guys enjoy the weekend. And for those who are coming to training camp practice tomorrow, just remember that, you're going to have some cool festivities that are there that Saints are kind of rassled up, if you will, but you got the Rebirth brass band that's going to be there starting at 8. That's 8 to 9. Dennis Allen's supposed to have a commemorative or just kind of a welcoming type thing to the fans. You're going to have Saints legends there. You're going to have Devery Henderson, who just got kind of recognized for the Saints Hall, that he's going to be there to sign autographs. You got Keenan Lewis is going to be there to sign autographs. And so there's going to be concessions. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of stuff. They've kind of done a lot of work where they've tinted off a lot of the areas. So in the past, you just kind of go and sit in the bleachers. It's a little bit more tolerable in the heat. So be sure to check that out. And come on, if you haven't reserved your tickets already, it's free to go. It's just got to get those tickets, but tomorrow's a sold out thing. I think the following Saturday sold out. They still have a few sessions left, but it's going to be a good time. It's going to be good to see fans. And I think the biggest thing to remember there is, you had COVID the past 2 years. And of course, COVID's still our thing, I guess, if you want to call it that. But past 2 years have impacted the amount of fans there. It's impacted, a lot of everything. So this is probably the first normal time where it says, man, it feels back to normal, back to football, all that type of stuff. So, well, I don't see any comments here, but guys, I appreciate you tuning in. We'll probably be doing this more on a consistent basis. I'd say 4:35 range, depending on what happens, but we'll be around here to do shows every single day. Again, I'm John Hendricks for Boot Crew Media. Thanks again for tuning into The Drive presented by Royal Honda. Y'all have a good one. Good weekend.